Hey there, Russ here. Welcome back to the shop. Okay, I'm going to ramble here today about I want to build my own DIY solar generator. But it's going to be different than anything you ever see, just like everything else I do. And there's going to be some features about this thing and capabilities that you don't see on any solar generator. Plus, most of the store-bought type of solar generators you can buy, they take forever to charge. They don't really give you all that much battery storage, dollar for dollar. It's very expensive. And on a lot of them, you can't use it while you're charging it. And some of them take 6-8 hours to recharge from a low state. So those are things that would not be acceptable to me on a generator. Now, if I had power where I was using a constant flow and I had a certain number of solar panels up to be able to maintain a level on my battery and let it go down and up slowly, but that's not what I really need for my environment, for me, where I live here in southern Wisconsin. It's different than other people elsewhere. One of the biggest problems I have here is we do lose power. It's in a rural area, and so sometimes, especially in bad weather, you can lose power even for days sometimes. It's during those time periods that it can get inconvenient to try to stay put in this place. Now, if I lived in Florida, what would I do? I would probably have a bug-out van as well as some kind of power storage that I could use, depend on if power went out. And I am making a van that I can turn into a bug-out van if I want. And one of the things I want for that is a house battery that I don't need to leave it in there all the time, because I'm only going to need it when I need it, not all the time. So I want to build a battery pack, a solar generator that I can throw into the van, plug it in about 2 minutes, and it's up and running as a house battery for my van. It'll have a built-in cable so that I can also plug in the shore power. So if I'm camped somewhere and I have shore power available, I can plug it in to charge it back up or to maintain and use that power instead of running off my batteries. So I have some definite things in mind on this solar generator to do, because it's going to be a multitasker. But I also want to be able to take it in the house and run my TVs and my hotspot for being able to get cell signal and be able to get internet, so I can still communicate to the outside world during that time period when there's no power. Now, I do have a generator, and that's part of my FOGS ideas theme of what I'm doing. FOGS, if you don't know what that is, you can look it up on my channel, and it'll tell you. Forced Off-Grid Survival. But while the power is down and I'm using the generator, I would turn it on so I can regenerate my freezer and refrigerator to keep them cool. Let the sump pump run the well pump, and do things so my well is while my well is running. If I need water and things like that, that's the time to get it. So I'd be turning that generator on and off, an hour here, an hour there, or 2 hours. And during that time, I should be able to recharge my solar generator also and continue to use it. So I really am going to be mostly dependent on it during that time when there is no generator or anything, and I can still run the most essential things for myself. And so it's going to be handy to have a nice power pack. Now, up to now, if you look back, you'll see I did a couple of 3 videos on what I call a power unit, and that was based on 2 35 amp hour SLA batteries. And I used that setup because that's what I had gotten. Somebody had given me those batteries, and so I made use of them. But it's been 3 years now, and they weren't new when I started using them. And quite honestly, I think they're about shot. So I think I need to do something. So that's why I'm thinking of upgrading. And if you hadn't noticed, the price of lithium iron phosphate batteries has dropped huge. A year ago, 6 months ago, a really high quality battery, a 100 amp hour battery, would run you $1,300. Now I can go out to AliExpress. I can buy the 3.2 volt cells of 120 amp hour battery packs, so you would need 4 of those. I can buy 4 of those, make my own 120 amp battery, and get the BMS and everything, and I can do it for under $350. So I can have 120 amp hour battery for less than $350. That is outstanding. And now it's in that price range where I have to consider doing it. Because I always had this thing where I was going to probably just do a 30 amp or a 50 amp hour battery and make something a little smaller. But for now, for about the same kind of money as I would spend for a battery like that, I can actually get 120 amp hours for $350. If I went to Amazon and looked at the good quality 100 amp hour batteries there, they're running anywhere from $500 to $600 right now. So, and those are 100 amp hours. So this is a little bigger and a lot cheaper, and even that. So I think this is what I'm going to do. Now, if you plan on doing something along this line, let me talk about this battery and the storage and that. For whatever unit you make, remember that your solar generator is all going to be based on that center power unit. How much amp hours are there? But also, watch out when you buy a battery, you also want to pay attention to the maximum charging rate and the maximum discharging rate. And you want them to have that 1C capability. 1C. What 1C means is that whatever that battery ampere hour is, let's say a 100 amp hour battery, 1C means on discharge means that I can drain that battery a whole 120 amps out in 1 hour. If you have a 1C input, that means that I can charge it at 120 amps and I can have that thing charged up fully in an hour. Now, should you do it that way? You don't want to run a lithium hardcore like that, 1 hour in, 1 hour out. That battery won't last a huge long time. You only get about 2,000 cycles out of most of these, maybe a little more. Now they're talking maybe 5,000 cycles. And you're going to shorten that number by how many times you do a full 1C input or output on it. So it's not that I wanted to always do that, but I do want it to be able to do that. And so that is why you got to be careful when you buy a battery, whether it's pre-made or you buy the cells. You want to look for that maximum input and output rating, as well as how many amp hours are on it. If you do that, you can probably find a pretty good battery at a pretty good price out there. And so that's the only thing you want to watch for on the battery itself. Now, I break this solar generator down into the 4 categories of the solar batteries, the batteries themselves, and the solar generator, how much amperage and output and input capability that it has, because everything else is going to be based on that capacity rating. So once you've established that and you're ready to do it, then you have to think about 3 other pieces of the puzzle here, so to speak. You need to figure out the input, and in most generators, you have 3 sources of possible input. You can go 110 input with a regular battery charger, and that could come off a plug-in power grid or off of a generator. And then you have DC power, where you hook up it directly to a vehicle and charge it off of your charging system of your vehicle. And you need a DC to DC charger for that. Or you can do it with green energy, solar and wind or something like that, doing some kind of good quality controller like an MPPT controller. And depending on how many watts of solar, if the sun is out, you can get something from there. And those are the 3 ways to be able to input into your generator. Now, because of my situation here, most of the time I'm going to be using it as a replacement for when I'm forced off grid. And if I am, then that way I can still plug in some of the important things using this solar generator. Instead of that 70 amp hour battery pack I had, I'll have 120 amp hours, I think, is what I'm targeting right now. But we'll see when I get going here what I end up buying. But I'm going to have, this is going to be based on that. And what I have, what I'm going to do is put the solar generator and the DC charger and mount them directly into my van, and the solar panels on top, so that if I want to plug this into either of those two source inputs, I have to take it to the van to plug it in and use it. But I'll still be able to take it in the house, use it there, and when I turn the generator on, I can plug it in and let it charge up from other sources and have that be able to charge it up. And when I turn the power off, I can still continue to run the other items, because that's one thing I'll be able to do is charge it while I'm using it. And I'll have a pretty high amp charger on the system, so that I will be able to charge that up even while I'm using it under most conditions. So the input will be from my van for 2 of the 3 sources of input. Another aspect to a solar generator that you have to think about is battery monitoring. You have to monitor the whole environment, how much power you have, how much power is coming in, how much power is going out, and things like that. It would be nice to have that on Bluetooth, so I'm probably going to put a BMS on my battery that has Bluetooth capability, so I'll be able to monitor that from my phone if I want. So that is the battery monitoring system. The third aspect to think about when you're doing one of these solar generators is the output. And most of these, like the store-bought ones, you get a couple of AC plug-ins, and you get a couple of 12 volt and 5 volt USB and cigarette lighter type plug-ins. But mine will have all of that, plus it'll have a couple other type of plugins that you don't see on their unit. Like I will probably put an XT30 connector on there, so I can just, if I have something that has that same connector, I can plug it in and use the power. This is a power source, but plug it into that generic plug-in. I'll have a couple of those on there. Also, we'll have an AC inverter, just like most of them do. The amount of watt output will be based on on what size battery you have in your generator battery source. I think mine, I'll be able to go up to maybe a 3,000 watt inverter with this, but we'll see. It may only be 2,000, but whatever it ends up being, it'll be a lot better than what this one here that I have. So we'll see how that is. But also there's one other way of generating of output of power that I want on this, that most generators I don't really see it. And that is, I want to have a set of jumper cables. And the jumper cables, that way I can actually be able to pull the full 120 amps out of this through these jumper cables, like if I want to hook it up to a vehicle and jump it, or if I want to take this and hook it up to a winch, a 12 volt electric winch, I could hook them up to that and run a winch from this, or some kind of electric motor like that. So I think that having that capability with 120 amp hours of battery power, I should be able to run a winch with that without any problem also. So I want some kind of jumper cables, so I have the option to hook it up to anything I want that way on the fly by using just those 2 cables. So I'm going to have that type of setup on this. Now I'm also going to put my jumper cables on 6-foot cord, let's say, but I also am going to put a small drum in there that I can take and crank it down to pull the cables in, because the cables then will always be plugged in, but I'll also be able to have them stored inside of my case, that the solar generator that I'm going to have. That way they're always there, ready and available. I'm also on the input side for the AC plug-in, that will also be housed in the solar generator box, and I'll put it on the drum to be able to roll that up, and I'll be able to just pull it out to be able to take it and plug it in. That cord will be probably a 12-3, and to give me 20, because I'd like to get 20 amp hours of plug-in power, up to. I also want to have this drum so that I can roll that cord up when it's not in use, and it will be stored in the solar generator too, out of the way if I don't need it. But it'll have a 50-foot cord to be able to reach a pretty far distance when needed. I'll have a series of plugins there so that if I am plugged into power, I'll also be able to use those plugins. And the AC charger will also be plugged into that power, and that will be hooked up to the battery, so that this will charge the battery when I plug it into 110 volt power. And so that's the idea behind all the pieces of what I'm putting in this thing. I think that's everything in a nutshell. That's the basic idea. If you want to see any of these pieces, just leave me a comment that you'd like to see this aspect. Now keep in mind, if you're an electric buff, you'll probably like this. But also, if you like to build your own camper or something, you might want to watch this too, because this will be able to be a multitasker. I'll be able to take this and throw it in the van, plug in a couple of plugins, and use this thing in the van as a house battery if I want. And I'll still be able to take the plug-in and pull out the cord, plug it into shore power, and use it to charge that camper van if I'm at a campsite where I can plug into power. So it's going to be a double duty generator, and I want to make it easy, so it should be nice for those that like to get some ideas about camper building, because this vehicle, I haven't forgot about it. This year has been a bad year for that, because I'm going to have to go out and buy stuff off and on, and this year I have not been able to do that since I'm quarantined. So that has been put off for a year, but I'm doing these little pieces still, and this generator is an important part of that camper van build. So this will be something for you if that's the part that you're really interested in seeing more about. And thirdly, I'm going to build a nice battery box for the battery when I build the battery, that will also be set into this box, and this box will be a really nice box when I get done. And it'll look really, I don't know how big it's going to be yet. I suspect it'll be big enough. I'll probably have a couple of wheels on it so you can haul it around like a hand dolly type of thing. But we'll see. But I'm going to have to build a nice container for that. So some kind of cabinet and of course wood hinges. And I think that when we get done, also I'm going to be building a couple of little wind-up drums that I'll be able to wind up to roll those cords up in. So you might be interested in seeing how I do that. I have some good ideas on how to do that. So this project is a little bit in it for everybody, I think. And maybe a lot for one person, possibly. So anyway, if you have any interest at all in a solar generator, you might want to follow along, because I think there's going to be some good pieces about this that I will help you to figure out how you build yours if you don't know how to already do it. If you already know how to do these things and you want to have suggestions, or if you have ideas of something that I can do to make it better, let me know. I read all the comments, and I do listen to everyone too, and think about them and see if I can make use of it. I don't use every idea, but I do consider every idea. So if you have any helpful hints or cautions, don't be afraid to mention them. I'm all for listening to that stuff, because I know there's some of you out there know a lot more about this than I do. So just leave it in the comments. If you learned something here, or if you like this video, hit that like button. Lets me know that I am doing the right thing. Most importantly though, please come back again, because I'm nowhere near done. Thanks, and we'll see you guys again very soon.